Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you for all of you who have been waiting for me on this live stream and everyone joining us. If you're new to my live streams, they're for you. Apart from my normal videos that I publish on a daily basis, I also have regular live streams for the subscribers and members and every viewer, really. Obviously, the subscribers and members can join in and participate because obviously you can get inundated with messages on the videos and it's difficult to answer all of them. And I feel like talking to the viewers directly can be very beneficial. Sometimes we might go outside the scope of the questions, but I feel like it helps put everything into context and deliver all of the picture for you, obviously to the best of my ability. In this live stream, I wanted to talk to you primarily about Benjamin Netanyahu's recent press conference. And obviously, I'll open the space up for you to share your views or ask any questions. He had a statement, a press conference earlier on. He mentioned lots of things. I'm going to highlight some of them for you briefly and have my take on some of the things he said. So he mentioned in his press conference that all of Israel is now a front. They're trying to kill all of us. This is what he's saying. We want to achieve victory. Hamas has delusional demands in reference to the amendments that they made on the Paris proposal for the ceasefire. And we won't go ahead until they reduce their demands. So he's continuing with his approach of military force up until Hamas back down. Obviously, Hamas is not backing down. I spoke about Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader statement, in my previous video that you can watch after this live stream. Absolute victory is a strong message to all of our enemies. This is what he's saying. So he's looking for an absolute victory. The military pressure is working. We're on the way to victory, but we are paying heavy prices, in reference obviously to the losses in the Israeli army. We are closing in on them on Khan Yunis. I speak to world leaders every day and I tell them explicitly, we will fight to complete victory, and this includes acting in Rafah. However, note what he added after this. Obviously, after we allow civilians in war zones to go to safe zones. He elaborated on that later on. Whoever doesn't want us to act in Rafah wants us to lose. He also added that the agreement in reference to between Palestine and Israel, a potential political solution, will only be made through direct negotiations. Under my leadership, we will resist unilateral recognition in reference to all of the talks that are happening across the world, and Blinken and some EU leaders about unilaterally recognizing a Palestinian state even before it's implemented on the ground. And he also said that this unilateral recognition is a prize for terror in his description. He also reaffirmed that we need unity in reference to the division that's happening in Israel. I ask everyone, don't listen to everyone steering divisions. And then he started getting questions from the reporters from multiple news networks in Israel. One of them asked him, why didn't he consult the war cabinet when he went to the negotiations in Cairo? He didn't consult the war cabinet. He just went there doing his own thing, and even sending one of his assistants in his office to accompany the Mossad head in these negotiations. He said because we went and only got delusional demands, according to him, from Hamas, including Al-Aqsa, which is true. Hamas made demands in reference to Al-Aqsa mosque, by the way, not just relating to the war. Pre-2002 situation, because after 2002, Israel started having kind of more freedom in Al-Aqsa. They started having people going up to Al-Aqsa, etc. I ordered them to go and listen, he said, his crew, negotiating delegation, but there was not a 1 millimeter movement in their position in reference to Hamas. They didn't move 1 millimeter from the position they set on their amendment. Now, people need to realize that Hamas's response to the proposal had some movements, but it didn't move from the core demands that are to the benefit of the Palestinian people, the way that Hamas and the Palestinian resistance view it, primarily in Gaza, which are obviously withdrawing from Gaza, getting aid in, getting approximately 2,000 temporary tents, 60,000 temporary housing units, aid all across Gaza, 500 tanks, all of these things, rebuilding the hospitals, rebuilding Gaza with a strict time limit, core things that they demanded, and he said that they didn't move 1 millimeter from these things. He was also questioned from the reporters about his administration, his government's criticism of America, particularly from Ben Gvir, the ultra-right wing. And he said, we appreciate the United States administration and government, but we have our disagreements and we don't get involved in US politics. He was also questioned very harshly about the Moody's degrading, because Benjamin Netanyahu always focused on economy, taxes, all of these things. He's always been a guy focusing on economy, and he clearly was taken aback by this question. But he said that, I don't think this is a financial failure. It's only because there's war, and after the war is done and we win, it will be back up. A couple of things were very interesting in his press conference. Everyone is expecting him to leave. We've been saying that the end of this war is the end of his career, including myself. This is what people are projecting. He was asked about immediate election calls after this war, including from his party, from people who are very, very close to him, calling for an immediate election after the war ends. He responded, elections have a date and it's in a few years' time. Now we need unity. It's not time for this. He's hinting that he won't submit to calls for elections, early elections after the war. So even if this ends and it's either a failure or a win or for Israel, he's continuing. He doesn't want to have early elections. He's saying that there's only a quarter of Hamas to eliminate in accordance to him. We're dismantling their infrastructure, but we need to unite and not engage in this politics. Again, speaking about unity, signaling the division. He was also asked about people going back to the kibbutzes around Gaza and in North Israel that were evacuated. You have approximately 250,000 internally displaced Israelis, obviously apart from those who left Israel due to the war, about them going back. He said another 7th of October is no longer possible, but maybe rockets. So this is hinting, at least to my understanding, that the man might agree to a situation where they might face rockets from Gaza, because he clearly realizes how delusional the idea is to completely dismantle and get rid of Hamas. He also was asked from the reporters about the Rafah invasion because of the refugee situation. And for the first time, he spoke about allowing if Israel would go on a military operation in Rafah, that there was a lot of place in north of Rafah, and there's a lot of place for people to go in 60% of Gaza. Now, I estimated previously that they won't allow that. He is saying that they would. Is this something new, or is it just something that he's saying to reassure people? Or is it also because Egypt, in the meantime, built another barrier after, just behind the Rafah border, that clearly sent a message to Israel that even if you do and you try and expel them, you won't succeed. They'll still be here and they'll go back to their homes. Very interesting. And at the end, he criticized there's a heavy marketing campaign against Benjamin Netanyahu across billboards on main highways, very, very busy highways, and across many, many websites all across Israel, top websites, top newspapers, a very vicious campaign against him. People were protesting earlier in Tel Aviv, calling him the crime minister and stuff like that. And he was telling the reporters, you're talking about a marketing campaign worth tens of millions. If it was the opposite way, and I was pushing for something like that, you'd be at it 24/7. Why are you not questioning who's behind this marketing campaign and who is funding it, signaling that there might be some sort of external intervention in this marketing campaign against him? He's being depicted in a very bad manner in this marketing campaign as an evil dictator, someone who's ruining Israel and stuff like that. So this is the main thing that I wanted to highlight about Benjamin Netanyahu's press conference. And I'll obviously open the space for you to ask your questions and have your comments. I will obviously try and highlight as much as possible. I don't promise I will, so please accept my apologies in advance. Firstly, Esdras Santos, John Doe, and Daniela, thank you very much for your super thanks. And Golden Sun, hello from Michigan, is saying thank you so much and greetings to all of you joining us. Okay. Dr. Ahmad Taj Al Sir Kandura is saying, Mahmoud, it hurts me to say it, but I'm slowly starting to realize that no Arab or Muslim army will make any advances towards freeing the Palestinian people, and this breaks my heart, even Iran. Look, we weren't expecting armies, obviously. You know, the people who are new to this, and probably many of you are, you know, always, you know, highlight how shocked they are by the lack of action. People who have been monitoring the Palestinian situation for long enough realize that that's the norm and nothing has happened. That obviously doesn't justify the lack of action, obviously. You know, this genocide needed action. And the problem is, even before you talk about military intervention, there are cards to be used. Financial cards, embargo cards, cutting ties, right? Cutting ties with people who support this genocide. You know, people haven't been using even these diplomatic cards, which is really shameful. Elisha Thompson, peace from Sacramento, California. Welcome to you and everyone. Okay. Why Beze? Why is that Lebanon does not use the same kind of self-defense Israel is doing? Do you mean, if you mean by the level of aggression and calling it self-defense, number one, because the Lebanese army is incapable in comparison to Israel. The only armed movement in Lebanon that is properly capable and is the most advanced military group that is non-government related is Hezbollah, obviously, and they are acting. It's not like they're not, but they're acting based on calculations, very many calculations, especially not to attract a bigger retaliation from Israel, because not everyone is on the side of Hezbollah in Lebanon. People need to remember that, and people are already criticizing them for even going into this war with the current situation in Lebanon, the financial situation, and all of these things. So they have many considerations to take, and they've been threatened externally, Hezbollah, many times as well. Abd al-Haq, given that Israel is saying Palestine to achieve their genocide, isn't Egypt, I'm assuming you're saying that, given Israel is saying that they want to achieve genocide, isn't Israel's faithfulness to the terms of their agreement with Israel on Rafah crossing make them complicit in the genocide? That's a very good argument. And I also spoke up against that particular agreement, because when you're talking about genocide and there's a genocide going on, you ditch that agreement because the people's lives are a priority. Egypt, obviously, they have their calculations. In terms of complicit in this genocide, look, to an extent, it doesn't help. I don't like to kind of label people, and because some people easily call people traitors or whatever it is. It's not my intent personally, but the act itself, I definitely have personally my criticism on it, and I think persons should be completely ditched because before that, when you spoke about Gaza, it was a liberated area, so Israel has nothing to do with it. Okay. The problem is with that area is it didn't receive international recognition. You had the quartet previously that Israel withdrew from, as in they started not dealing with them, which is four main countries trying to reach a solution with regards to Gaza and the West Bank. But obviously, it's something that isn't really good. Ansarullah saying dozens of people in the defense ministry were arrested on Monday morning on suspicion of corruption. The end of the year-long undercover investigation conducted by the Israeli police's Lahav 433 unit. Interesting. I didn't really hear that. Yeah. But I'll look into it and hopefully give you some more information. And you also said Ansarullah and the director of security and defense establishment, according to an Israeli police spokesperson. I'll look into that. Elijah El Karaki is saying, hey brother, hope you are doing well. I just want to thank you for your voice for our people. I'm in Nevada in the US, and even here people are becoming aware. Much love. God bless. Thank you very much. God bless all of you. And I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much for this. ASM is saying, do Israelis want a savage, inhumane leader like Netanyahu to continue as their leader? Are they all gone crazy or what? Well, look, the polls in Israel show that most of them are against him now. So the recent poll shows he lost about 2/3 of his political power. So if there were elections today or just after this war, if it ends very quickly, this guy's losing. This is why he started to say now in his recent press conference that I spoke about that there are elections in 4 years. He's going to have a very difficult time maintaining that, by the way, if the war ends, if this genocide ends, because he already was facing problems with the judicial protests against him. You had historical numbers of Israelis in the streets calling to end this, calling him a dictator. And he's going to have a lot of problem maintaining that. But most of the Israeli citizens, well, obviously, whether you're talking about complete Zionists or non-radical Zionists, they're against him. They're not really with him. Look at the war cabinet, look at the people who are aligned to him, look at his party even. He's getting more and more criticism from his party. Irma Galvan, is Netanyahu for real? What's wrong with this guy? Where's his head? Yeah, he's real, but let me tell you something. Benjamin Netanyahu does U-turns, and his U-turns and some of his moves might surprise you. Like his enabling of Hamas getting hundreds of millions of dollars when they were ruling Gaza. Okay? Like him paving the way for the Islamic movement in Israel that has the same roots of ideology as Hamas, but participates in Israeli politics, to enter the coalition. They didn't enter with him, but he paved the way for them to enter for the government that followed them. And this movement in particular in Israel, they were a violent movement in the 80s, but then they had a shift in their ideology, started participating in Israeli politics, saying, no, we have a non-violent route, we're taking the political measure, we have a special situation inside of Israel. So many people criticized him for even like enabling that in Israel, but that's Benjamin Netanyahu. And don't be surprised if Benjamin Netanyahu actually sits down with Hamas at some point. Don't be surprised if that happens. Christina Haynes asking if Egypt opened the gates, would Palestinians refuse to leave Gaza, or would they agree to go to the desert? So, with regards to the Palestinians in Gaza, um, some of them might feel the pressure and they would have to leave because naturally, as human beings, when you have a traumatic and big event, it's a fight or flight situation. And when you have families, when you have liabilities, not in a negative way though, but when you feel like you're responsible to keep people alive, you might think, no, I will flee anywhere to keep me safe. Others might think, no, I know this is what they want, I'm going to stay. So you will potentially find people who will flee, but you will find others who will remain. But like I said, Israel's plan to expel all of them is being really, really put in its place, especially with the measures inside the Egyptian Rafah. Irma is also asking who trusts Netanyahu. Clearly, that he has a core, uh, nuclear unit in Israel who really believe in Netanyahu. Some people still believe him. Some people are still surprised that he still has a third of his popularity left in Israel after all of this. But clearly, some people still, believe in him. Muhammad Buleish, Salam Mahmoud, I would like to know if Egypt is in good terms with Hezbollah. Not great. I don't think they're in a great relationship with Hezbollah. But, I mean, Egypt's dynamics in the Middle East is becoming kind of more open. So when it comes to Hezbollah, they'll probably try and reach negotiations and stuff with them. Obviously, previous Egyptian administrations have been very vocal and critical about Iran and its involvement in the Middle East, but things have changed, at least in the last 6-7 years. But now, I look, I don't think there are fans of Hezbollah. But I don't think like Hezbollah is a party they don't really deal with. Look, they're not fans of Hamas. Hamas had very bad tensions with them, right? But both sides realized that they need each other and they reestablished their relations. And then now they have talks with them, right? There could be other things that we don't know in terms of their relations. And because they're strategically and they're very close to them geographically, whereas Hezbollah's in Lebanon, so they have kind of less interest in them. Odin Allfather, ICJ just turned down Africa's plea to for action, appeal to Israel to comply. Net said no. Yeah, I mean, after the ICJ had their ruling, the order, right? Israel massacred 3,000 people. So, you know, the only thing that the ICJ is doing is deterring other countries from dealing with Israel, but it's not deterring Israel. It's definitely not deterring Israel. It's deterring other countries more than it's deterring Israel. Manan Kader, Salam, bro, Mahmoud, is it true that Hamas has surrendered in thousands and have been dismantled? Thank you. Look, this is what Israel's saying. We don't have any evidence of that. The people who they show as surrendered are males, like males. Some of them are children, visibly. You know, they strip them, they take them, they say that's Hamas. What's your proof that they're Hamas? They weren't armed. They weren't anything, right? You can have an argument that it's Hamas, but they were wearing like civilian clothing or whatever. But as long as you didn't catch anyone fighting with you, they have weapons and you have concrete evidence that they're members of Hamas, what are you going to do? In terms of dismantling them, well, they're still fighting them in every part of Gaza. How can they claim that they dismantled them? Netanyahu is saying they dismantled 20 out of their 24 brigades, and the remaining 4 are in Rafah, which is absurd, really. Unless he means like the key structural organization or whatever it is, but from the facts that we're seeing on the ground, they're still very much organized. They publish everything on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, they don't publish all of what they've done with Israel due to security and complex situation purposes, like the spokesperson of Al-Qassam said yesterday, Abu Ubaida. So that notion is not really translated. So there's nothing to support it. There's no evidence to support it, that they have been dismantled. I mean, if you've seen like a mass reduction in resistance moves against them, which also could be a strategic move, by the way, you could say, okay, hey, look, they're still fighting everywhere, though. So and there's nothing to support Israel's claim, to say the least. The trans Ilama, assalamu alaikum Mahmoud wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Allahumma barak feek for your hard work. Thank you very much. Barakallahu feek. D2G Demos Arab League of Nations just agreed on lots of sanctions. I didn't hear that yet, but I mean, if we hope they do something. Interesting. Marcus Spute. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Spute or Spute. Question. Who would be behind such a campaign towards Bibi, and what is most likely? Outside, inside Israel government, private interest? Interesting question. Well, he clearly had opponents and people who dislike him in Israel historically from a very long time ago, who have interests in such campaigns being published. But with this genocide, he made even more people who dislike him. He made more and more people dislike him and wanting him to fall. Because when you're talking about the United States of America, the US administration, to them, Israel is a US base in the Middle East. So they want to have the higher say, right, when it comes to Israel. And there was an understanding between them and previous Israeli leaders that that's the case. You know, okay, if the US puts this pressure, then okay, we back down. They're our biggest supporter. What they say, we need to follow. That's not the case now. Benjamin Netanyahu is stretching it a lot with the US. He's making more people dislike him. And there are many people who would be happy to put in money to take him down. So you could potentially be talking of a situation where it's a joint effort internally and externally both people from inside Israel, supported by potentially money from outside, that are having this massive campaign against him. Faiza saying, do you think Pakistan can do more? I'm from Pakistan, feel terrible about Muslim countries not doing more. Okay. Once the previous, one of the previous heads of the Mossad, I forgot his name now, but he said his biggest nightmare is Pakistan, because according to him, it's a Muslim country with a nuclear weapon. However, we know that Pakistan is ruled by the army who's very close to the US. Of course they can take more action, you know. Many countries can take action. And like I said, even threatening to play with certain cards, whether economic or cutting diplomatic ties. Obviously, Pakistan never recognized Israel, so that's already something else. You could argue that people who already have relations with Israel have more leverage when it comes to cutting ties or, you know, degrading the level of representation, cutting economic ties. And again, you haven't seen any action against the people supporting Israel, which is something very beneficial, which just shows that these people are two sides to the same coin. Daniela saying, Daniela Modus Qatar is saying, Turkish NGO saying they're going to break the siege with ships with with aid. Look, if they're trying to do something like the Marmara, they saw what happened with the Marmara. The Israeli army attacked them. Okay, they killed about 9 Israeli soldiers there. But I'm not sure how possible that is, especially because Turkey previously said that they will send another aid ship and a flotilla, but they didn't. Now, with what Israel's doing, you wouldn't be surprised if they bomb them, if they literally launch a missile at the aid ships. Joe Reed, the rescue op, did they get those 2 hostages from exchange gone wrong? Okay, a couple of things. Interesting question. Number one, these 2 prisoners, they were elderly and frail. The resistance claimed they weren't with them, they were with the civil side. Because in the beginning of this war, Al-Qassam brigades, they said that not all of the prisoners are with us. Some people went in and they had, it could be like, I don't know, organized armed people, groups, rather than the resistance. They said there were over 50 back then. And most likely these people, they don't have the capability and the infrastructure, the tunnels like the resistance. So it's easier to get to them. So that's number one. Number two, they said a lot about the action, and apparently Benjamin Netanyahu said he was watching it as in one, but they didn't publish anything. Reports from the ground said that there was no fire exchange when it happened. The only thing that happened is Israel heavily bombarded and killed and massacred civilians in Rafah, probably to cover it up and to cover up the ambush that was there before in Khan Yunis. However, even if let's say it's a successful military campaign to take back Israeli prisoners, let's take that argument, you would need a further 22 years to release the remaining 134. And as a matter of fact, Israel killed over 80 of their own prisoners in Gaza during this barbaric bombardment, and now they're celebrating too. So it's difficult to call it success, to say the least. Liba the Great, is it possible for the US is trying to get Bibi out of the way and maybe try him in the ICC to make way for a more reasonable partner for themselves and the Israeli government? yeah, there's a big argument to support that because why is Netanyahu paranoid in close allies meeting, war cabinet member meeting anyone else? Because he knows some people dealing with them. Like we had a report that most Arab states who are dealing with Israel, speaking with Benny Gantz, not with Benjamin Netanyahu, he's probably favored by the American administration. Why did Antony Blinken try and speak with the IDF chief directly, which is not something usual? And Israel, the government, especially Ben Netanyahu and his very close allies, because even if you talk about the government, right, you're talking about this core right wing. So yes, the US is trying to find someone more reasonable than Netanyahu, but he is very persistent in his position. Joe Reed also asked the footage of Mighty Sinwar in tunnel fake, right? I really assume that they're fake because don't forget how much um, Israel lies when it comes to these things. And his face wasn't shown. We didn't have no date, we had no confirmation, nothing. It's probably propaganda for domestic public opinion primarily. This is what they, because Ben Netanyahu, he needs an image of victory. They were talking about the Shifa, then it turned out to be a farce. Then they spoke about Khan Yunis, and they apparently found his shoe in Khan Yunis, and all of these things. So I assume it's just another lie, another unsubstantiated piece of evidence, like the other propaganda and fake made up videos that they published. Elisha Thompson is saying, what did you think of Nasrallah's speech yesterday? Thank you, brother. One love. Well, to be fair, I didn't listen to all of it because I'm accustomed to Nasrallah having very detailed speeches, and he'll go through the things he wants to talk about in general, but I heard snippets of it. Clearly, he's signaling that things will escalate. Israel will be punished for what they did. If we want to take that punishment and compare it to previous punishments that Hezbollah had, you're probably talking about another strategic blow to a certain Israeli base or something like that. Is it going to be a reason for him to open an all-out war in Israel? I don't think so. They're still trying to contain it as much as possible. As a matter of fact, if you hear Israel, they're saying, like Ben Netanyahu in reference to Lebanon, he said earlier on that we're looking to obviously reach a deal with Lebanon. It's either going to be in a diplomatic route, political route, or in another route. Now that was kind of the lower tone. You've had people who are saying we're going all out from the Israeli government, war cabinet. I mean, the most fierce tone was from Yoav Gallant, the defense minister. And you had people who are outright against it in Israel because they know they're incapable of such an operation. Let's go to the other questions. Joe Reed is saying Kuwait was the PLO biggest supporter, and I'm guessing this is the power behind the PA. The Palestinian Authority has, if you want to talk about money, they get lots of money from multiple places. They get money from some of the Arab Gulf states. They get money from Europe. They get money from the US. They have a lot of money in the Palestinian Authority. Not just one country. Obviously, greetings to everyone, saying hi and welcome to all of you. I'm just trying to kind of focus on the questions. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will get to all of the supers as well in a sec. Everyone sending super thanks. Thank you very much. I will get to all of you and mention all of you. Sharon Smith is asking, will Gaza be more or less safe after the hostage releases? It depends on the condition of Gaza after the exchange. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated with regards to the negotiations, because Hamas, they wanted to enforce certain measures when it comes to the prisoner exchange that will allow Gaza to be a good place, semi-good place at least to live in. When it comes to this, obviously Israel doesn't want to follow these demands. So Hamas is asking that Israel withdraws its army, stops the aggression, stops the flights, obviously on stages, 3 stages. Obviously the proposal was 45, 45, 45, with commitments for the future. Allowing temporary housing, confirming that everything will be rebuilt, getting the same levels of aid Gaza was receiving before this genocide, and getting things back to normal. Israel doesn't want that. Netanyahu, from his perspective, this military pressure is being done to make Hamas submit and go down on its demands list. Mr. Nunes 617, do you think Israel will bomb Rafah border so that Palestinians can go into Egypt? It's crazy. You would, yeah, that's definitely an option. But like I said, they're clearly having more and more pressure on them, and Egypt already took measures to counter that, also unilaterally, most likely, without speaking with Israel. And now, like I said, when Netanyahu had his press conference, for the first time he mentioned the possibility of the Rafah civilians going north. And he's saying that there's still 60% of Gaza to go to. Whereas we were expecting that they would bomb them from the north to make them flee, but clearly some of this pressure or movements or actions are having a shift in Israeli plans. But obviously it's still an option. Christina Haynes, in the UK, the Labour Party has lost my vote because the Labour leader joined with the Tories in supporting Israel. Yeah, I mean, the Labour Party is corrupt from the core, really, as the Tories, as the Lib Dems in the UK, in my opinion. They're all corrupt and they're all shameful when it comes to this stance, and it just highlights how much the Zionist lobby has a hold on them and buys them. If you haven't seen this, by the way, those of you who are interested in British politics and Zionist meddling in British politics, there was an undercover Al Jazeera report in 2018-19, I think, about representatives from Israel, from the Israeli Embassy and Foreign Office, and their dealings with British politicians, both from Labour and the Tories. I mean, you can look into it and see how deep it is. I mean, you're talking about something similar to AIPAC in the US. Shannon L, thank you so much for your super thanks, and all of you, and I'll hopefully get to the rest in a sec. You asked, how do you see this ending? It's difficult to see how this ends, but we can try and kind of make assumptions onto how this ends. You either reach a temporary settlement which will lead to a complete ceasefire and a prisoner exchange. That will take time. It won't be done quickly. Like, people need to remember, when one Israeli soldier was kidnapped in 2006, it took 5 years to complete the deal, and we were nowhere near the complication level that we're at the moment when it comes to Israel. And you'll have an ongoing conflict. Or you will have continue this war, this genocide. It gets even bigger, and then it's win or lose for either party, and it won't be looking good for Israel. To the letter of law, allegedly Netanyahu's real name is Ben-Zion Milikovsky. Milikovsky is his father's surname, you're right. Many Zionist leaders who came, they changed their surnames to make them sound more Hebrew. So Milikovsky Netanyahu, David Ben-Gurion, he was David Grun, Moshe Sharet was Shertok, the family, and that's just a couple of examples. Sprinks said, to be an MP, all you need to do is swear an oath and loyalty to the lobbyists and donators, and you've got the job. Oh, and never criticize Israel regardless of what they do. Spot on. Joe Reed, Germany cannot talk about Palestine. It's only anti-Putin protests. Very strange days. Yeah, you'll see. Okay, this opposition guy dying in prison, plastered over all of the mainstream media. But the hundreds of lives lost on a daily basis, the children, these images, they're not plastered. I wonder why. Red Gorilla is asking, and thank you for your super thanks, Red Gorilla, thank you so much. Nar Adler reports that the munafiqs of UAE, Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, Morocco have been giving intelligence and arms to Israel to go around Houthi blockade. Is this true? Turkey, I heard that they still have economic ties, and there were protests in Turkey about it. Egypt, with regards to Israel, they're probably in the worst situation they've been in since their peace treaty, in my opinion. UAE, they have peace with them. UAE and Jordan, they definitely are supporting the alternative for the coalition. And Morocco, the Moroccan government still has ties. And obviously Egypt, everything is still functional in terms of the treaty, but every line of it confirmed by Israeli intelligence has been breached, and the political class is not talking. The presidential office refused to get a call from Netanyahu just over a month ago. They don't speak. The only talks they have is between their security committees in charge of Rafah primarily, and even then it's very tense with them because Israel takes unilateral action despite Egyptian discontent and disagreement with what they do. Ramplans 1, Ehud Olmert said the IDF killed 20,000 Hamas members. Again, claims that, show us the evidence. Look, show me the evidence and I'll believe you. Look, most likely the Palestinian resistance, they will declare after this war, because to them, people who fight and they lose their lives, they're martyrs, and they'll be proud of them. So they will most likely publish these images. So not the images, the numbers. So we'll see after this ends. They're probably keeping it secret now, just to not intervene with the war or give Israel an image of victory. But the numbers that Israel is showing, I mean, again, pathological liars, really. So everything should be questioned. Mr. is telling me, beloved brother Mahmoud, all of my reactions on your page deleted. You need to realize that obviously there's YouTube moderation with comments. So review what you've written, what language was used, and potentially if it triggered something. Another thing to take into consideration, that if for all of you who view obviously and comment, if many people report you, some of your comments might automatically be taken off. So you need to bear that in mind, and to see if that works, try and use probably a different account, try and write similar messages, see if it works. Because if it doesn't, then there's clearly someone's flagging up probably your account. Mariam is saying the reason why they ousted Imran Khan because he would have backed Palestinians with nuclear threat support. We literally send our armies everywhere. Yeah, I mean, look, he obviously worried them because they don't like democracy in the Middle East. They don't like people being choosing their leaders. And Imran Khan, he had a level of independence, and they don't like that. Whether he would have, used the nuclear threat, I'm not sure, because that's like a last second thing. But I think he would have probably used more leverage with regards to Pakistan's abilities and power, although they don't have relations with Israel. Because now Pakistan as a state, obviously not the people, the Pakistani people support like Palestine massively. In fact, they're one of the biggest nations to support Palestine from people I know. Like they love Palestine, talk about Al-Aqsa a lot. But with regards to obviously the government, I don't think um, they're doing much at all. Uh, Zotosen is saying something interesting. Thanks for your work. You're welcome, obviously. We can say who comes after Bibi will be much better. You're right. You're very, very right about that. And I reiterate as well. Obviously, there are problems, particularly with Bibi. But it's not Bibi who is the main problem. The main problem is that you have an apartheid, genocidal, supremacist, racist, oppressive occupation. That's the problem that's being enabled by the US, by the UK, by the EU, and supported blatantly. That's the key problem. So taking out Netanyahu won't take away the problem. That's why we always call for dismantling of apartheid and supremacy and implementing equality. Yet, for some reason, this scares people. They're scared of equality. They're scared of democracy in many places. Del Sendero. He asked a question. On the anti-empire project, they were talking about a drop off the fighting based on both IDF and Hamas reports. Have you observed this to be the case? Look, there's still fighting going on everywhere. The intensity will change, but every day there is certain activity going on both ways. Israel obviously continues the massacres on a daily basis. They kill hundreds of people every day. And the resistance, they publish videos. Sometimes, for example, you'll see the smaller resistance groups publishing more videos than Al-Qassam brigades, for example, that belong to the Hamas. I'm not sure if that could be like a hint between them that, look, we're willing to kind of think if you back down with this. But even if you talk about Al-Qassam brigades, you know, every consecutive action, and they have taken the most action so far, sometimes you could see reduction, but we haven't seen anything significant to signal that there is proper progress. The only time we've seen a visible reduction was when there was a temporary ceasefire, but even then he still had some breaches, particularly from Israel. But that's when we saw that, okay, there is actually some sort of a ceasefire. Why throws Egypt just moved from to BRICS system? Did you know that, Mahmoud? Yes, they are free from US. Yeah, and not only Egypt. In January, Iran, Ethiopia, and the UAE joined the BRICS. So it's BRICS EU now. Z asked the question, given the intense speech that Nasrallah gave yesterday, how likely is it we'll see a full-blown out war with Lebanon the next week or so? Look, things can escalate in any given moment. With regards to Hezbollah, I think they won't go to a completely all-out war, but they have the reason to intensify the attacks. And if Israel retaliates very heavily, they might say, well, look, they committed this massacre. Will we see it immediately? Could be. Could be. Look, Israel's Division 36 is there. This is the most advanced division that was participating in Gaza, but failed, by the way, funny enough. They were in central Gaza, but they put them in Lebanon. So they're preparing for an all-out war. They said multiple times that we are ready for an all-out war. As a matter of fact, many governmental organizations in Israel warned the population from severe outage, electricity outage, shortage of food, lack of water, because they know Hezbollah has the capacity and precise missiles to target these key locations in Israel. So there is definitely preparation, but I think they will try to reach a solution politically. That's Israel primarily, by the way, before it gets out of hand. Even if Hezbollah does a big retaliation for that massacre, like, don't forget, they've attacked the Northern Command, Air Command base in Jabal al-Jamraq, it's called in Arabic, or Har Miron in Hebrew. They have two, Israel, one in the north, one in the south. Ramon base in the south. That's in charge of all of the Israelis' air operation across the east northern part of the Mediterranean and the areas surrounding Syria, North Iraq, these areas. So they attacked it. And they also attacked the central command of the IDF in Safad. They attacked them multiple times and they caused a lot of damage, but Israel still didn't go all out with them. If this happened, you know, and obviously Hezbollah did that as a retaliation to the political assassination of Saleh al-Aruri and other leaders. But if that happened on any given day in Israel, if we didn't have what's happening in Gaza, Israel would have gone all out already in Lebanon. So there are many calculations to do with number one army readiness for Israel. Don't think, they're failing in Gaza. Every sign we see from Gaza is that the army is failing and they're incapable. You're having mass refusal to follow orders from Givati, one of their biggest brigades and divisions in the IDF. They're refusing to go, right? And they're being trialed in the IDF. So how can you do that? And they haven't been able to progress and enter any major refugee camp in Gaza. Khan Yunis, you've been fighting in Khan Yunis for 3.5 months now. What are you doing? What kind of success can you claim? Al Burej, Al Nusayrat, Gaza City, Jabalia, they haven't done anything significant apart from destroying buildings and killing civilians, because the resistance is still active in all of these places. So that's also something to, obviously they're not going to say that out loud, but if you read between the lines, some Israeli previous leaders in intelligence and military, they said that, look, we can't do that. The previous head of the Mossad, Tamir Prado, said we need to agree to a deal by the conditions of Yahya Sinwar, because he knows how bad the situation is. And clearly, though, the Israeli government didn't hear about the term damage control. They're increasing the damage rather than controlling the damage, even if the other side claims victory. Abdel Mahmoud, why does Egypt not let the women and children in Egypt, those who could stay and fight the Zionists after the victory, the Palestinians can come back? Well, they take certain people who are injured based on their circumstances in limited numbers, not to show Israel that we're taking all of them. If they start taking people in massive numbers, whether you talk about women and children, and Israel continues, and Israel has full security control like they're stating that they want full security control, what does that mean? They can prevent people from coming back. And now they're saying that they want Operation Rafah. Well, what about if they control the Rafah border? Are they going to allow the women and children to come back or keep them outside? They're clearly calling for the expulsion of Palestinians, and Egypt knows that. So that's why they're not taking them in massive numbers. Anisur Shamim, what do you think would be Egypt's next move? They're waiting to see what Israel would do in Rafah and respond accordingly. I don't think they will be entering war up until the last second. By the way, anyone expecting Egypt to enter the war if Israel goes into Rafah, I don't think that's going to be the case. But if anything starts to, even though, listen, from an international law perspective, many countries surrounding Israel have the right by international law to take preemptive strikes against Israel. Many countries, because they've proven that they are committing genocidal acts. It's proven already by the courts. Yet no one is doing that. No one is even talking about that. Okay. With regards to Egypt, I don't expect they will do anything unless they are attacked within Egypt, or consider what Israel's doing in Rafah to be crossing the line, which doesn't seem to be the case. As a matter of fact, people who didn't think that bombing Al-Ma'madan hospital and the other initial massacres a red line, they wouldn't consider what's happening in Rafah a red line. The red lines were already crossed. The black lines were crossed. in the beginning of this genocide, in the early days when the bodies were piled up in their thousands. These were black lines, not red lines, for everyone to take any action possible to stop this barbaric massacre. But clearly, many people didn't consider that a red line. So why should they consider Rafah a red line? Saying that, there are more sensitivities with regards to Rafah, and you also have an incapable army to a very large extent. I mean, if they haven't had successes in all of these parts, and they're telling me they dismantled Hamas's brigades all across, and now it's only Rafah, right? What are you talking about? Still fighting you everywhere. The tunnel system is still functional. As a matter of fact, the Palestinian resistance is fighting them over the ground more so than under the ground, by the way. Buildings that were evacuated, they're fighting from them. And one instance, we saw the resistance launching missiles from an evacuated building, digging holes and launching missiles on Israeli soldiers in Gaza. Are you telling me that that's success? And that's just a few weeks back. Is that success? And you want to go to Rafah? And I'm not sure if it's part of Netanyahu's image victory thing to kind of, if it ends after Rafah, to tell the Israeli population we've been through all of Gaza. Because don't forget, in the beginning of the war, don't forget the early days, it was a Shifa hospital that was the base. Went in, oops, no Shifa hospital base, right? They couldn't force, even though they tortured him, the hospital manager, to admit that Hamas is using it as a base. Oh, now it's Khan Yunis. Right? Because Khan Yunis is where Yahya Sinwar was born and stuff like that. So they want an image of victory that they will not get. Christina, thanks for the thumbs up encouragement. Taylor Samhuri, where's your kufi? Oh my god, I felt hot today. So I didn't wear the kufi, but it's next to me anyway. Don't worry, you'll see it again though, don't worry. It's not gonna have more than enough kufiyas. But the black and green is special. Oh, we have more people missing the kufi. Harriet, don't worry, it's gonna come back, I promise you. As a matter of fact, if you watch my video that I recorded earlier on, you'll see it. Okay. Mr. is saying the question is who is going to get the best victory? Look, both sides can claim victory after this. And it would depend on who wants to believe them. The question is how many people are aware of what is victory, okay? So if Israel's argument, for example, victory means destroying Gaza, then they're victorious, they destroyed Gaza. Is that a military victory? Was that their declared aim? No, their declared aim was to demolish the Hamas, not make Gaza a threat ever again. These were the two main aims, and get back their prisoners. They didn't dismantle the Hamas. As a matter of fact, Hamas still has functioning civil services in Gaza. They didn't get their prisoners back, and they didn't make Gaza a place where that's not a threat. So even if you're on the Israeli side and this war, this genocide ended, it would be hard to stomach any claim of victory. The claim of victory is much stronger on the Palestinian side for a very simple reason. The mere survival, the survival of this barbarism. You're talking about over 50,000 tons worth of TNT. That's over 3 times the level of Hiroshima and Nagasaki's nuclear bombs. the mere survival, the fact that these people are still fighting, the fact that they're still resilient, the fact that they're still fighting over the ground and under the ground, the fact that they're still trying and actually they have imposed conditions previously, they will most likely impose some conditions in the next year. That all of that shows you that David, the real David, beat Goliath in the end, and the victory is for the Palestinian people, not just the resistance, everyone in Gaza, and hopefully all of the Palestinian supporters. Marvin Vergas question: do you think the Syrian will try and take back the Golan Heights soon? It's a strategic location, water, I believe. Any other value? Okay, here's a bit of history about the Golan Heights. Good question, Marvin. The Golan Heights, Syria lost them in 1973 when they entered the war with Egypt on Israel. They were offered help by the Ba'ath party led by Saddam Hussein back then. He sent his army. They saved Damascus. Al-Ba'ath party, Saddam Hussein, Iraq, they saved Damascus. They went down to the Golan Heights. They recaptured parts. They were about to reach Tiberias, Tabariya, the Iraqi army, to help the Syrian army. The Syrian regime told them stop. When they told them stop, they were not happy. Saddam was like, hold on a second, we can get you back your territory, we're with you, standing with you. Why did they tell them to go back, the Syrian regime back then? Clearly, there was a deal. We'll protect you, give up the Golan Heights. They had many options to take action about the Golan Heights. And by the way, it's not that complicated with regards to the Golan Heights, because you don't have a lot of like Israeli population up there. Where there are, but not many. But they didn't. So there was clearly some sort of an agreement there. However, if you want to talk about like if there's to be a peace process, like the previous Israeli, the late Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, he was about to reach a two-state solution with the Palestinians, and included in this deal was a potential deal with Syria. And he showed willingness to negotiate getting the Golan Heights back to Syria. I don't think Syria will take direct action when it comes to this. Obviously, they do have action in terms of support for the resistance. And they're not in a military position too, because of what's been going on in Syria in the past 13 years. But if you want to talk about them getting that territory back, it will either be through an all-out solution with Israel, if they agree to a Palestinian state, and then Syria recognizes Israel, or if an all-out war continues, and then, you know, territories are open. But in terms of resources and water, it's very valuable. It's a beautiful place, the Golan Heights. By the way, very, very beautiful, beautiful fruit, lovely apples, like stuff like that. Dera Raber is asking, Ramadan isn't that far. Do you think that the IOF is going to hit them harder? IOF has a history of bombings in Ramadan. You're right. They have a history of bombing in Ramadan, starting wars in Ramadan, starting wars in Eid. It's like Satan is at work. Will it intensify? I am not really sure. It would depend on, you know, the progress when it comes to the negotiations, the prospect of a deal, and what's happening on that front. I don't think, because look at how much already they destroyed. 60% of the houses in Gaza are uninhabitable and destroyed wholly or partially. Isn't that enough for them? Didn't that fill in their vengeance and hate and venom already? But you don't know what they could do. ABCD is saying Netanyahu is destined to fall. The question is, what lengths is he willing to go to? Either lengthen his position or do something so drastic the world will never forget his legacy. That's a correct assumption. I mean, all leaders will fall eventually, but he is trying to make something drastic, clearly. But don't be surprised if Benjamin Netanyahu does a U-turn, as long as that U-turn is to his benefit. If the U-turn is to his benefit, he'll go and shake hands with Hamas tomorrow. But if it's not to his benefit, he won't. So expect lots of things from him. DJ Blitz 341, any thoughts on Saudi government on Palestinian lives? As in, I assume you mean like support of Palestine. I mean, they've had probably the most underwhelming response, to say the least, when it comes to this, isn't it? You have some of their media demonizing the Palestinian resistance. They declared that they're willing to, make a peace treaty with Israel if this finishes with a Palestinian state. Is this the time to do that? Saudi Arabia, the biggest oil exporter, you have so much power, you have so much power. Do you know what I mean? They used their oil as power in 1973, but then King Faisal was assassinated. That was a message to them. But still, when you have so many things you can play with, use the cards. Deep Diver said, do you still consider Egypt to be a strong, ready military to stand against Israel when it backed down on its strong rhetoric and created a buffer zone for Gaza instead? I think they are fluff. Yeah, I still think they have a very, very strong military. I mean, that's evident. If you go and see how well equipped they are, you would know they've diversified their military. They're their strongest Arab army. But again, that doesn't say they're going to attack Israel or they're going to enter the war tomorrow. I mean, some of you sometimes translate what we're saying as in raising hopes or whatever. We're not here to raise false hopes or, make these great assumptions as to what happened. We're here to analyze the situation and be as realistic as possible, really. Not to mislead people, not to raise two hopes high up. Is the Egyptian army strong? Yes. Can they take massive action against Israel? Yes. Are they in the greatest relationship with Israel? No, they're not. The Israelis are showing discontent from them. The finance minister said the other day they bear considerable responsibility to the 7th of October attacks. We're talking about substantiated stuff here. I'm not just telling you my thoughts, right? One of the previous Amman experts whose speciality was infrastructure in the Arab countries. He said that Egypt broke, and I spoke about him in one of my previous videos to do with the Egyptian tunnels in Sinai. He said that Egypt broke every single line in the peace treaty in terms of what they do in Sinai. So it doesn't mean they're like, sitting in one bed with them, but they are obviously a country. They have their own interests. You can criticize, obviously, what they're doing, what they're not doing. Absolutely. But from my perspective, I'm just telling you it as I am seeing in terms of evidence, in terms of what they do, in terms of what the Israelis say, in terms of what they say as well, and some actions on the ground. And I hope that clarifies. Liba the Great is saying to any Muslims in chat, at Ramadan, is there no exception to the fasting requirement in situation like this? In Gaza, yes, of course. I mean, the Quran states, وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. For those who cannot handle it, you pay fidya and you feed the poor. Cannot handle it, you can have many translations. And obviously each person knows what they can handle and what they cannot handle. Obviously you have the sickness where if you're fine with fasting in general and you get sick, you can fast them after Ramadan, for example. But if you have an ongoing condition where fasting makes you like incapable of doing many things, it has its toll on your body, you have obviously an exception from the Quran. I hope that helps. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. Harriet is saying, I hope they don't attack Rafah, but I think they will do before Ramadan. Look, they can attack at any point now. However, it's being delayed for multiple purposes. For political purposes, it's being delayed for military political purposes and international pressure as well. I obviously hope it doesn't reach that stage, but you don't know what to expect from them after all they've done. MJ Kenneth question, will Texas join the resistance? Texas, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they have the Texit, as they're calling it now. Khalid Razak, thank you very much for your super thanks, and I will try and get to everyone who's sending supers. Thank you very much, and everyone who's commenting. I'm just trying to reach with to the other questions or relevant comments before we wrap up. 100 Alma, what does the process of impeachment of the PM in Israel, is it even possible? I do not recall that happening in history. They tried to put in measures to disallow a person who has criminal charges from running as prime minister, but obviously Netanyahu didn't let that go through. I'm to be honest with you, I'm not sure if it even exists, because even if it did exist, someone would have probably triggered it. Whether it exists and needs a majority, that's a different story. But you know, people are thinking of many ways to get rid of him. Danny 2022, do you think Corbyn can create a party in the next election to go against Tories and Labour? Well, I'm surprised he didn't do that already. When he had these backstabbers in the corrupt Labour Party previously, he had the momentum, he had the younger generation supporting him. He brought the Labour over half a million new members, I think, in a very short period of time. And I'm surprised why he already didn't do that. He can potentially do that. I'm not sure how effective it is with Jeremy Corbyn. But you definitely need something in politics in Britain, really, against this corrupt situation. And Molly, thank you for your super thanks. I hope I'll be able to get to reach all of you. I'm trying to. Um, okay. Sal, a brother, there has been some info recently emerged about Sisi's mother being a Jew. Were you aware of such thing? Yeah, I heard it before. It is certainly a possibility. You're saying similar to MBS Nanny being a Jew. I heard that before. And I don't know how relevant that is, someone's religious or ethnic background to what they do. And what the other leaders who are pure, supposedly Muslims and Arabs, are they doing a great job? You know, there's this notion behind this that, you know, because his mother is Jew, he's doing this. What, don't we have Jewish people supporting Palestine? Don't we have Jewish people against Israel? Many Jewish people are against Israel. Many Jewish people don't like Israel more than you and me. Okay, many people criticize it to the high heavens, and I know many of them, trust me. So I'm not sure how relevant it is. So even if his mom was Jewish, or even if he is Jewish, right? We judge the actions of the people. We judge what they do, regardless of what they believe in, right? And that's the main thing I think we should focus on: actions rather than whatever someone's background is. Joe Reed is asking, are there Palestinian communities in the coast like Jaffa, other than Gaza? Yeah, but the coast is full of Arab communities. Like my native city of Haifa has a big Arab community. Jaffa has a big Arab community. Other parts have Arab communities as well that are still there. FP. Salams Mahmoud, thanks for your input. Question. Netanyahu is clearly deranged. Why has he not been sectioned yet? It's not that simple. It's not that simple. And he still has people supporting him really, really badly. That's an interesting question. 100 Alma, Mahmoud, brother, if you had the power, what would be your approach to for the liberation of the Palestinian people? Is it possible to get there in a peaceful way? Well, if I had the ultimate power in terms of politics, if you ask me, you'd simply implement equality, right? Because it only takes political steps to implement equality, have freedom, implement justice for everyone living in that land. Israelis and Palestinians, have solid, obviously, laws in place to protect all of the communities when it comes to this. And that's if I had the power. You know, that's what I call for, really, an implementation of equality. But I'll call a spade a spade. You know what I mean? It doesn't make us delusional and not realize the fact that some people are under oppressive occupation and they have to fight to protect themselves. No, but that's what I would do if I would have power. I would implement equality for everyone, and that will ultimately really solve the problem. You're talking about equality. It's very basic, and I'm not entirely sure why not more people do talk about that, really. Question: will AIPAC ever be dismantled? JFK was trying to stop this very thing from happening, and then he got killed for it. JFK was criticizing the deep state, not just AIPAC. And the deep state is deeper also than AIPAC. AIPAC could be obviously part of that. He was criticizing, he was obviously assassinated. Yes, it can be dismantled. Why should you? I mean, think about it from a logical perspective. Imagine you had like a Chinese or Russian lobby in the US buying politicians. Wouldn't that, make people outraged? Why is it okay to have a Zionist lobby that commits genocide in the US that has so much money and power and they can buy politicians? And I mean, what's happening now is made people think and speak up against it. I've never heard anyone talk against AIPAC as much as I do now. Um, and again, I repeat, Israel did everyone a favor by letting this persist for so long. They've woken up so many people. Alec Bahiri, thank you very much for your super. David Post, an oil embargo would bring the US to its knees. Why not use it? Yes, David, I hope I elaborated when I said about the King Faisal using it as an embargo back in the 70s and him being assassinated. Clearly, back then, and don't forget the level of bases the US military has in Saudi Arabia. But clearly, from back then, the US administration clearly took some steps to prevent such a measure from happening ever again, because what King Faisal did at the time really hit the US badly, very, very badly. And I think they took measures to prevent that from happening again. But obviously, these things, they're not going to publish them. They're not going to tell you, oh, hello, we have an agreement with the United States that we can never put an embargo. Otherwise, they'll take all of the royal family out of power, right? Something like that. But clearly, they've implemented things to prevent it from happening. And that's why Saudi Arabia is not, is not doing anything. Nimer Sheheiber, Mo, have you heard that they are charging 5,000 to the Gaza people to cross the Egyptian border? I've heard of several people saying that some corrupt people are asking them for money to flee. Obviously, it could be dodgy people, it could be someone trying to blackmail them. We've heard that. This is awful, really, capitalizing on people's misery. Very, very awful, reprehensible. Ahmed Khamis, thank you very much for your super sticker. Marvin, question: have any foreign fighters come to join Hamas, Hezbollah, or other groups? What nations? No, they mostly don't. Hezbollah, maybe they do because they have more of an open border with Syria. But it's not like they need people. I mean, Hamas, you have more than enough people. I mean, do you think Israel um, didn't make enough people hate it and want to eliminate it in Gaza already by what it's been doing all of this time? Do you think they need more? What Israel's done throughout the course of history has created a generation of people who want to completely get rid of it by what it's done. The only things they've seen from Israel is killing and oppression and occupation and lies and racism, arrogance, supremacy, barbarism. That's what they've seen from Israel in Gaza. The whole population is resistance. Rene Thugere, thank you so much for your super. I'm sorry if I missed anyone, by the way, because I'm just going through the questions. And Verlith, how's the HA viewed by people in the UK? Victory is close. HA is in reference to Hamas. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, they don't have statistics here. The poll that they made that was in America, it showed like probably over 25%. That's like 3 months ago. Now it's probably more. In the US, they actually had a poll where over 25% of the younger generations, they actually support Hamas. And they said that Israel should give the land to them. Now it's probably more because they saw what Israel is doing, and they've gone back to history, and they have seen what Israel has been doing all along, which was an interesting poll. I don't think anything as such has happened in the UK, so it's difficult to establish an understanding. And you obviously need to bear in mind the fact that Hamas is a proscribed organization in the UK will obviously make people reluctant of telling, "Oh, I actually blatantly support them." You know what I mean? Because it's an illegal offense to do that, which also shows that 25% of Americans were brave enough to say that, despite the fact they're also a prescribed organization in the US. Irma Galvan, if Israel survives this assault in Gaza, do you believe their economy will bounce back? I highly doubt so. But the problem with the Moody's is it's probably gonna be followed by S&P and other credit scoring companies, and it's also the projection. So not only they have degraded it, it has a negative projection. So after the war ends, we're like, okay, hold on a second. You've had this war and you had the opportunity to stop it and you took it for so long. How am I going to even trust you or invest with you? And clearly, some of Israel's closest allies are refraining from dealing with them, and because of the ICJ as well. So Netanyahu is selling this as a lie because to him, I'm Mr. Economy, Mr. Security, failing at both. And I want to convince people to still have some sort of investments in Israel after this war ends, which is not likely to happen. Golden Sun, thank you so much for your super thanks. Can you imagine if Palestine created a crypto coin? It will be a hit now. Turkmen Ogli, thank you for your super. I heard that Turkish MIT is helping inside Gaza with aiding Mujahideen. Any clues on that? I haven't heard anything of the sort personally. It didn't come to my knowledge that any such thing happened. Um, are they supporting with Egypt, obviously under the radar and not publishing things? Maybe. But I personally am not aware of anything of the sort. Marvin Vergas, do you think an international security force in Gaza would be permitted to protect Palestinians? Look, if 1%, if 0.1% of what happened in Gaza happened in a country that the Western governments don't like, that would have been an excuse to them. If the level of aggression that the Israeli regime as a regime has, as a systematic regime, existed in any other country, Western governments would use it as an excuse for a preemptive strike. They have been going on about Iran for so long. If a protester dies in Iran, by any way, by the way, without investigating, they'll plaster the image all across media, call for a regime change. We need to change them, the ayatollahs, the this, the that, the they won't stop. But when there's a genocidal satanic death cult proving to the world that they're committing the worst crimes in contemporary history, they seem to turn a blind eye. Why? Because they're the same. I'll tell you from now, because they have the same ideology, because they share the same beliefs, and because they sympathize with them. So this ideology that exists in Israel has an extension with the people who support it. That's why. Joe Reed is saying the Yasin 105 is utterly superior to RPG-7. Yes, and it's developed and manufactured by the Palestinian resistance. They destroyed 1,000 tanks with it, with the Yasin 105. They named it after the late martyr Ahmad Yasin, who was their leader. Israel, he was on a wheelchair. Israel, do you know how they assassinated him? He was going in a wheelchair outside a mosque, and his two sons were moving his wheelchair. He told them, I'm hungry, I want to go have breakfast. They were taking him. Israeli helicopter launched 4 missiles at him directly. Racheli, thank you so much for your super thanks. You said you're a gem. Many thanks for your analysis, and thank you for your support. And everyone else sending messages, I'm sorry if I'm unable to go through all of them. Okay, let's take a last couple of questions. Well, we could sit here forever, but obviously we have to end it soon. So I'm just going to take the last couple of questions before we end. Okay. Danish Bar, thank you for your super. Really cute. Okay, let's browse through the last couple of questions. Okay. I'll finish it with Liba the Great's comment, and I think we spoke about it. The way the US went off about the human rights about Navalny's death made me cringe when they ignore human rights in Gaza. Navalny was a Nazi anyway. I mean, we've seen videos of the man with salutes. There were reports of him calling to take the Russian passports, right, and residency from the Caucasians, from those of Dagestan and Al-Qawqaz area because of their Muslim background, and he gets supported. But does that surprise any of us? They support Nazi forces in Ukraine. They support a worse than Nazi regime in this Israel, right? What else do you call it? So obviously not surprising. This is the world that we live in, that we work to change, hopefully. But very good point. Face plastered all across mainstream media, and I made a comment earlier on his face, and not the bodies, not the piled bodies of children, of babies, not the piled bodies of innocent civilians killed solely for the sake of a hateful, vengeful, supremacist, racist, barbaric, genocidal, satanic death cult. And we'll end it there. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for everyone who sent super thanks. I'm sorry if I forgot to mention any of you, but I really do appreciate you and your support. Thank you to everyone who commented and asked any questions. I'm sorry if I missed any of them. Again, I really am sorry. It's just because we obviously are restricted in time, and obviously we just try and stick to the subject as much as possible. It was really nice being with you. As usual, I'll hopefully, inshallah, be with you every night at 10. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend, day, afternoon, night, and I will hopefully see you soon in the next video. Take care. Bye.